Get started in 2 minutes. All set. Okay. All right. Good morning, folks. I'm State Senator Nick Miller. I serve as the policy chair, represent parts of Lehigh and Northampton counties up in the Lehigh Valley. Today have a hearing regarding the solutions, really around addressing topics of supporting home care workers and consumers, specifically direct care, employee wages, and the trends observed in the Commonwealth over the last decade. We'll have a number of my colleagues joining us. I have Senator Kim and Tartaglione here. Senator Saval should be joining us, as well as Senator Hughes and Senator Street. We will have some members joining us on Zoom. Want to just touch on the purpose of the hearing and then turn over to my colleagues for some opening remarks. We want to emphasize the urgency around investing and supporting our home care workers and consumers. We know that the governor proposed an increase of $21 million of investment in participated directed home care. This would help attract and retain and sustain this workforce that provides services directly to adults with disabilities and older Pennsylvanians. By 2032, we know that we'll need over 217,000 home care workers and personal care aides, a 15% jump over the last decade. This is a critical time in this industry. Just within the last couple of months, I personally joined in my own district, a constituent. Was able to sit down at their kitchen table and talk through issues that they're facing. And really one of the biggest challenges, as we know, is affordability, and not just for that aide and the constituent, but across the board, whether it's housing affordability, but making sure that these folks that are in this industry can afford to stay in this industry to take care of Pennsylvanians across the Commonwealth. So with that, I want to turn it over for opening remarks to Senator Tartaglione. Senator.
Thank you, Senator Miller. I'm going to keep this brief because I know we have a lot of testifiers and everybody takes longer than 5 to 7 minutes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Senator Tina Tartaglione, and I represent the 2nd District here in Philadelphia. I represent North Philadelphia and a bit of Northeast Philadelphia up to Mayfair, for those who know the city. We'll get to all of what makes direct care critical to Pennsylvania and why it is in crisis shortly. But I wanted to just share 2 points why this is important to me. First, I'm a person with a disability, and though I've learned to manage, I've had to have, at points in my life, help. And I've had the support of family and friends along the way. Direct care workers give people the type of support I've received and so much more, whether they are based in an agency or participant direct workers who are often the friends and family of patients. From my own experience, I know how this service enables livelihood, fulfillment, and dignity to the people in their care. Second, I represent the largest Medicaid population in the Senate district in the state. I have over 170,000 direct folks, participants in Medicaid. I represent 268,000 people, and I have over 170,000 folks on Medicaid. 144,000, roughly 50% in the district. This means we have one of the largest populations making use of home and community-based service waivers, and therefore one of the largest needs of direct care. We have a massive stake in what we can accomplish for direct care, both today and in the future. I am excited to get started and extend thanks to Senator Miller for organizing this, SEIU for hosting this, my colleagues for their partnership, and our testifiers in advance for sharing their knowledge and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kim.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Patty Kim, State Senator for Senate District 15. I represent the city of Harrisburg. I want to thank Senator Miller for bringing us out here. I also want to acknowledge my former state representative colleague, Stephen Kinsey, for being here. He has been a long advocate for human services, and I appreciate you being here. So I think the reason why I was invited, I don't get invited to a lot of these things, is that I helped pass, it's actually my resolution, House Resolution 165. What we did was it passed, and we tasked the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee, which is an independent committee, to conduct a study of the effect of HCBS workforce shortages on Commonwealth-supported Medicaid waiver programs. And they did a study, almost like an investigation research, and I'm just going to share briefly some of the findings, which is in line of why we're here today. Demand for home and community-based services is expected to continue to grow in Pennsylvania, further exacerbating the direct care worker shortage. We all knew that. The General Assembly should consider requiring annual inflation adjustments to HCBS state-directed rates, including a required amount that must go directly to direct care workers. The General Assembly should work with the Department of Human Services on the appropriate Office of Long-Term Living, Home, and Community-Based funding levels, including rate increases that periodically adjust for inflation and other market considerations. The General Assembly should consider holistic solutions to address the direct support professional workforce shortage, such as additional funding for Office of Developmental Programs waivers, while also funding the workforce recruitment, retention strategies, such as investments in education. And finally, the General Assembly should work with the Department of Human Services, the appropriate funding levels to continue to prioritize reducing the Office of Developmental Program waiting lists. There were other findings there, but it is a recommendation, an independent source is recommending the General Assembly to invest in this area. I look forward to the testimony, and thank you, Senator Miller.
Thank you, Senator Kim. Senator Saval, for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Good morning, everyone. I apologize for my lateness, which is especially embarrassing given that this is my district, and it's one of the most densely concentrated districts in the world. That aside, I apologize. I want to, of course, thank everyone for convening this, especially to the panelists for taking time to prepare their testimony on this hugely important topic. I won't belabor the points that my colleagues I know have been making about the labor of home care workers, how deeply undervalued it is, how much home care workers are routinely overworked, we know it's one of the largest industries in Pennsylvania. Workforces in Pennsylvania. More than 400,000 home care workers rely on in-home care services, but 112,000 direct care shifts go unfilled. So we know that we need to be doing more, and we need to be doing better by our workforce. And that's especially why I'm grateful to have workers represented here today. And I am looking forward to the hearing and to hearing everyone's testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So to kick us off for panel one, we're going to go into the process and kind of the overview of the study. Joining us from the LBFC, the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee that actually conducted the study on Zoom. Stevie and Shanika are going to go through kind of that process to kick us off in that first panel, and then we'll move into the second panel. So we'll turn our attention to the Zoom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, good morning, senators and other guests. I am Stevie Sprinkle, project manager from the Pennsylvania Legislative Budget and Finance Committee. You can't see them, but they're right beside me. We're having technical difficulties today in Harrisburg, but LBFC analysts Shanika Mitchell-St. John, Dave Boyden, and Amy Hockenberry join me. Our participation at today's hearing is to share key points from our June 2025 study on home and community-based services. I will provide a brief introduction about our committee for attendees who are outside of the legislative branch. LBFC is a bipartisan and bicameral legislative service agency with 12 total members of the General Assembly, 6 from the House and 6 from the Senate, including our very own Senator Tartaglione as our vice chair. We conduct performance audits and research studies at the request of the General Assembly through acts and resolutions on an extensive number of topics that relate to public policy. We complete our work in an unbiased and independent manner, addressing each study's objective through data analysis and discussions with subject matter experts, among other techniques. So House Resolution 165, as Senator Kim mentioned, tasked LBFC with studying the effect of home and community-based workforce shortages on Commonwealth-supported Medicaid waiver programs, the Pennsylvania Lottery-funded Area Agencies on Aging programs, and Act 150 services. From HR 165, we established 3 objectives: to review wage and contracted rates for home care staff and home and community-based services, to determine staffing levels needed by HCBS providers, including staff members with specific expertise or certification, and 3, to determine whether medical assistance program reimbursement rates and funding for the AAA programs impact the recruitment and retention of the HCBS workforce and appropriate funding levels to ensure a qualified and sustainable workforce. Our report was laid out in 6 sections. Section 1 explained our report methodology, and Section 2 provided background information. In Section 3, we discussed the direct care and direct support workforce more generally. We found that existing federal and state wage data does not directly track workers in long-term care, and more specifically, home and community-based services from other healthcare settings, making it difficult to study this workforce. Consistently tracking data is essential for monitoring the HCBS workforce and testing the effectiveness of strategies to assist the industry. As shown in the exhibit on the screen, Pennsylvania was 4th in the United States as of 2023 for states with the highest employment level in home health and personal care aides. We also found that demand for HCBS will likely continue to grow in Pennsylvania. Individuals with disabilities and their families tend to prefer living in home and community settings over institutions. And with the baby boomer generation aging, the demand for HCBS is also growing. This increasing demand further exacerbates the disparity between the available workforce and the number of workers required. In Section 4 of the report, we discussed programs and waivers falling under DHS's Office of Long-Term Living. We found some of the rates paid by Pennsylvania medical assistants to providers, sometimes by way of managed care organizations, have not kept pace with inflation, other states' averages, or market benchmarks. These reimbursement rates ultimately impact wages. Additionally, the Office of Long-Term Living is not required to review rates or conduct a rate study on a set timeline, unlike DHS's Office of Developmental Programs, which must review rates at least every 3 years. I would note that despite the lack of regulatory requirements, the Office of Long-Term Living did conduct and release a wage and rate study prior to the release of LBFC's study. In Section 5 of our report, the focus was on the Office of Developmental Programs waivers. Direct support professionals, or DSPs, are not tracked as an occupation in state and federal data, making it difficult to analyze this specific part of the HCBS workforce. Because DSPs are not tracked as an occupation in government wage data, the exact number of these workers is unknown. It's estimated to be around 60,000 in Pennsylvania based on, again, non-governmental data. DHS noted that while some tasks performed with existing tracked occupations such as personal care aides, home health aides, and registered nurses, those jobs overlap slightly, but those jobs are not equivalent, nor are they compensated equivalently. According to non-governmental data during our review period, the average DSP wages in Pennsylvania kept pace with the National Consumer Price Index, but were lower than in surrounding states with available data, which is the map on the screen. During our review period, the DSP workforce faced higher vacancies than other Pennsylvania economic sectors, and there were not enough resources to meet the needs of individuals waiting for services. As of 2024, over 13,000 individuals were on wait lists for the Office of Developmental Programs waivers. In Section 6 of the report, we discussed Department of Aging AAA options programs. Wait lists decreased between 2021 and 2024. However, there were still nearly 2,000 individuals waiting for home support and personal care services in 2024. According to the Department of Aging, of the individuals waiting for AAA options programs, 38.9% were waiting due to insufficient funding, and 52.4% were waiting due to no available providers. Financial resources for these programs is limited due to funding being from the state lottery funds. We made various recommendations in this report, including enhancing workforce data collection to facilitate rate setting, budgetary decisions, and other public policy considerations. We also recommended that the General Assembly consider requiring annual inflation adjustments to HCBS state-directed rates, including a required amount that must go directly to direct care workers. Additionally, the General Assembly should consider holistic solutions to address the direct support professional workforce shortage, such as additional funding for the Office of Developmental Programs waivers to increase direct support professional wages and reduce waiting lists, while also funding other workforce recruitment and retention strategies, such as investments in education. Thank you to the Senate Democratic Policy Committee for inviting LBFC to share about our HCBS report. The full report can be found on our website, which is linked via the QR code on screen. And our team is available to answer any questions you may have about the report at this time.
Well, and thank you very much for presenting that. And I want to acknowledge our leader, Senator Casa, has joined us online. I saw Senator Carney as well. I'll open it up to any questions from my colleagues for the folks from LBFC. And I can't see you online, but if Senator Costa or Carney, if you have any questions, just come off mute and we'll answer them as they come.
Senator Miller, I have no question. Just a comment. I want to say thank you to Budget and Finance for conducting a report. This is space that I know is very important to our members in the Senate Democratic Caucus. And the recommendations that you made, I think, are all thoughtful, particularly the one that talks about ensuring that whatever changes or rate changes that we put into place or street revenue that we generate and drive to these programs, that they make their way to the providers, the care providers, the individuals who are providing the service. That's always been an important feature for us going forward, and we'll continue to advocate along those lines. But thank you for the report and the recommendations.
Thank you, Senator Costa. Senator Tartaglione.
Okay. Don't mind my back, Stevie. You guys did a fantastic job as usual. Thank you for being here and detailing your report again. While we don't have wage data, we do know that the Medicaid reimbursement rate in PA sits at a paltry $20.63 per hour, where Ohio is at $28.96 and West Virginia is $25.44. I know we can't assume that the difference in reimbursement rates makes it to the direct care workers, but was there any unofficial data or other evidence you found that these states have higher wages or direct care workers?
The only evidence, again, because data is so limited, was specifically about the direct support professionals. And that, as I mentioned, that's, we're lagging behind our surrounding states, which is problematic when, you're talking about a border state that's paying higher. Why wouldn't that Pennsylvania worker go work in New York if they're going to get a higher wage? So that's the extent that we could analyze. We would really like if, labor and industry could start tracking this differently so that we could be able to better answer that in the future if there would ever be a follow-up to this study.
Okay, thank you. That's unfortunate because I've learned in trying to raise the minimum wage for all these years that skeptics here don't always respond to comparisons to New York, New Jersey, or Maryland, since they believe it's a different type of state. I don't agree with that reasoning, but I've realized it's more effective rhetorically when you can point out Ohio and West Virginia being more or better than Pennsylvania at something. Our folks only make maybe the highest $13.50. They've not had a raise for as long as I can remember, and I've been in the Senate a long time. What about workforce shortages? And again, it's not a perfect proxy for wages, but do we know if Ohio and West Virginia have a similar rate of vacancies in direct care positions?
We did not look at the surrounding states' wait lists. We only looked at Pennsylvania's.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Just a follow-up. Is there specifics around the labor and industry improvements that you'd want to see in terms of tracking?
So part of it is also federal labor data, and DHS, I don't know the current status of that situation, but DHS did write a letter at one point to the U.S. Department of Labor saying, you really should consider restructuring the way that you're tracking specifically the home and community-based workers. So there has been some kind of movement at the federal level to do that. Our state LNI could do it without, like they can add codes if they want. So we recommend that was one of the big recommendations out of our report, is just go ahead and do that. If the federal government's not going to, at least we'll have the data in Pennsylvania. Of course, it would be nice if we could compare that data then to Ohio, New Jersey, et cetera. But, in lieu of the federal government not doing anything about this, then at the state level, we could at least do that.
Understood. Thank you. Senator Sabal with a question.
Just for clarity on that, and so we not only lag behind other states in terms of hourly wages, but we also lag behind other states in terms of their data collection. Is that correct?
We didn't look into other states' data collection.
Okay.
It's just that, the federal data on labor statistics, that kind of sets the stage for every state to then collect data in that same way. So it's a uniform process. I'm not sure if any of the other states are, doing it on their own, but if the federal government is not going to do that, then at least at the state level, like I said, Pennsylvania should at least be doing that here. It would be nice if all the states were doing it in a uniform manner, but that's not occurring right now. But I'm not sure if any individual states are doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Hearing and seeing none. I want to thank the LBFC for presenting that. With that, we will move to our second panel for the state of the care of the care system as a whole. We've got the president of the SEIU Healthcare PA. We've got a local home care worker and a consumer that we'll ask you to come up to the front of the room here. Matt, if you want to kick us off then, thank you.
Gotcha. Good morning. How we all doing?
Morning.
Is it still morning? Yes, it is. Great. Well, let me just start. My name is Matt Yarnell. I'm president of SEIU Healthcare Pennsylvania. We bring together 25,000 healthcare workers from multiple sectors. Those are registered nurses in acute care hospitals, nursing home workers, home care workers, and then also Commonwealth health professionals that work in different registered nurses, largely in various different departments of the state. I first want to just start by thanking Senator Miller and the Senate Democratic Policy Committee for inviting me to testify today, and thank Senator Tartaglione and Kim for your leadership in making sure this study was conducted. It's undeniable that Pennsylvania is facing a caregiving crisis. Every day, more aging and physically disabled Pennsylvanians are in need of home care services. Meanwhile, wages remain stagnant, pushing workers to leave the industry or flee to neighboring states to better provide for themselves and their families. That's why it's critical that we find ways to help this workforce with a strong union voice for caregivers is necessary and as a precondition for change. I want to just give a little history lesson on what I think is a model in the home care space, and that is the state of Washington. So 20 years ago, caregivers in Washington state founded their union. That's Local 775. Caregivers there made poverty wages, just like here in Pennsylvania, with no raises and no benefits. And today in Washington, the state of Washington is seen as a national leader, where caregiving is a path to a quality profession with advanced opportunities, recognition, and respect. In Washington, approximately 75% of the workforce is providing care in a robust participant-directed model, where workers are organized in their union, and as a result, caregivers together with consumers have successfully advocated for a $33 an hour reimbursement rate and other investments to raise standards and quality. Some of those standards that have been achieved, just to highlight, workers are paid based on their experience, and the pay currently is ranging between $21.44 an hour to $24.34 an hour. These workers also have health insurance for just $25 a month, multi-employer sponsored retirement plans, and 1 hour of paid time off for every 24 hours worked, up to 140 hours per year. I know the home care workers in this room are like, what? Along with strong penalties, including penalty fees and damages and interest for late or inaccurate payroll. In Pennsylvania, through our union, thousands of home care workers in the participant-directed model have been able to meet regularly with Secretary of Human Services, Dr. Val Arkoosh, to help improve our home care system for attendants and consumers. As a result, Pennsylvania caregivers have seen modest improvements in access to their investment in training, as well as improvements to enrollment and hiring processes and participant direction. In addition, union home care workers employed with agencies play an important role in ensuring resources are invested in the front line. These are important steps forward, but there is much more that Pennsylvania can do to ensure that the workforce has the right to organize and see the improvements in our long-term care system. We need investment into our direct care workers and home care services in order to make sure we're able to provide care for the growing population of aging and physically disabled Pennsylvanians who need it. That's why we are working to grow participant direction model of care. The participant-directed model of care is the most efficient model. Under this model, eligible seniors and people with disabilities are able to receive services from a caregiver without having to go through an agency. This means that the public dollars that are invested to home care go directly towards the care being delivered. In most other states, the participant-directed model is growing. However, in Pennsylvania, we are seeing a decline in utilization of this model. This is concerning, and we are glad that Governor Shapiro and the legislature are taking this decline seriously. Number one, there are things we can do right now to help home care workers in crisis. The first way to help in the crisis is passing the state budget that includes the Governor Shapiro's investment of $21 million to the participant-directed model of home care. The proposed state funding would leverage an additional $27 million in federal matching funds, bringing the total investment to $48 million. These dollars go directly to care and would bring the state's 8,000 participant-directed home care workers up to at least $15 an hour wage while providing benefits like paid time off for the first time ever. That's number one. Number two, on accountability, the second way we can support the home care workforce is through passing legislation like Representative Benham and Ortite's bill, which would raise reimbursement rates while building accountability into the system. As the study makes clear, one of the barriers Pennsylvania faces in providing quality home care services is the lack of oversight of where public tax dollars are going under the agency model. Agencies are distributed reimbursement rates, but the state has no way of knowing what those dollars are spent on. They could be going to profits, to billboards up and down 95. They could be going to administrative costs, executive bonuses, or wages. There's just no way for the state to know where the money is going. That's why legislators like Rep. Benham and Ortite are advocating for accountability measures for home care dollars to make sure dollars meant for care actually go towards care. This report recommends that the Departments of Human Services, Aging, Labor and Industry collect data on this workforce to help inform rate setting, budget, and policy considerations. Currently, this data is not collected, as we just heard, and instead we rely on self-reporting to get a picture of agency wages across the Commonwealth. The suggestion by this report and proposed legislation by Representatives Benham and Ortite would alleviate the impacts of the lack of existing data by ensuring this workforce is earning a wage that is being regularly reevaluated along with the Consumer Price Index. Third thing, a wage board. Another way to strengthen the home care workforce is through establishing a direct care worker wage advisory board, like the one that's proposed by Senator Saval's bill, known as the Good Jobs for Quality Care Act. This board would determine a minimum wage for direct care workers, imposing penalties on employers who fail to meet the minimum wage requirements. Other states, like Minnesota and Nevada, have successfully implemented healthcare worker wage boards to stabilize the industry's ability to provide quality care. Pennsylvania home care workers deserve the same. This report reaffirms what home care workers have been saying for years, that investment into home care cannot wait. We need to lift rates with accountability measures, establish a wage board, and ensure workers have a voice and self-determination at their job. I just want to say one last thing before I turn to our next panelist, and that is, and Senator referenced this, the average wage right now for home care workers is $13.30 or 50 cents an hour, all across this Commonwealth. And I don't care if you live in Altoona, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, there is nowhere any worker can live on that kind of wage. And so I just think it's on all of us to figure out how we make sure that the people of this Commonwealth have the ability to age with dignity, and certainly, or folks who are living with disabilities have the ability to have the dignity and self-determination of their care and their setting of choice to live. And so I just think it's upon all of us to figure out how to solve this crisis together. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll turn over to, we'll hold on questions till the full panel's done. Monica, we'll turn it over to you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Monica McDuffie, and I am a home care worker. And I'm a home care worker and a nursing student. I've worked in home care for 6 years, but my journey as a caregiver began long before, when I cared for my grandmother during her months of hospice. That experience changed me. It showed me that true care looks and feels like every day. Love, patience, dignity, and that's why I do this work. But my story is also deeply personal in another way. I was born with a rare organ condition that weakens my respiratory system. And it requires everyday sustaining medicine and medical care. I've been sick since birth, and my life depends on Medicaid. Without Medicaid, I wouldn't be here today. It pays for doctor's appointments, specialists, treatments that keep me alive. Without it, I would die. So when I talk about home care and Medicaid, I'm not speaking in theory. I'm speaking from experience. As both a caregiver and a patient, every day I care for people whose lives depend on me. One of my clients is a woman in a wheelchair. She needs me to help her eat, bathe, go to the bathroom, and stay clean and comfortable. For her, home care means dignity. It means being able to live a full life and be treated as a whole person rather than merely survive. I also care for a father with incurable bone marrow cancer. His medication, covered by Medicaid, lets him stay home with his family, where he feels safe and loved. Without that coverage, he wouldn't make it. Though he has home care, there's also a lapse in hours offered to each and every client that we have. And so in that lapse of hours, he has fallen and had many trips to the ER and stays at the hospital because of the lack of coverage. I also feel that we are real people, and that we do depend on the funding to just care for our own families. We have mothers, fathers that we take care of on a regular basis that needs us and depend on Medicaid and Medicare. These are real people, mothers, fathers, grandparents, neighbors, and I am not alone in caring for them. Across Pennsylvania, tens of thousands of home care workers show up every single day to make sure our seniors and people with disabilities can live independently, safely, and with dignity. But us workers are at a breaking point. Pennsylvania is facing a full-blown home care crisis. There simply aren't enough caregivers to meet the demand. The reason is simple. The work doesn't pay enough to live. Many home caregivers are making as little as $12 to $13 an hour, without benefits and often without any paid time off. This means that people like me who devote their lives to caring for others can't afford their own rent, child care, medical bills, and it means workers are forced to choose between taking care of their clients and taking care of their families. And it means that more and more people are leaving this profession altogether. When you can make more at a fast food restaurant than you can keeping someone's grandmother alive, that's not just a labor issue, it is a moral failure. Governor Shapiro proposed a $21 million investment in home care back in February. This looked like a critical first step in the right direction, a lifeline for the people, for workers, and those receiving care from us. Here are some of the things it would allow us to do. Raise wages for more than 8,000 home care workers, helping us afford to stay in this field. Provide funding for paid time off for the first time ever to thousands of caregivers like me who have never had a single day to rest or recover ever. Help stabilize the workforce so seniors and people with disabilities aren't left stranded without the caretakers they need. And to ensure that taxpayers' dollars go where they belong into quality care, not to corporate overhead or profit. This investment could also help level the playing field between agency-based and consumer-directed care so that families have more freedom to choose the model that works best for them. But as we know, we are sitting here today and the state budget is more than 130 days late. That delay is not just a problem, it's a life or death situation. Every week we wait, more caregivers leave the field, more consumers go without care, and more families face impossible choices. What would you do if your loved one or even yourself did not have the option to age at home, near family and community, while having to pay an impossible cost to an institution that doesn't have the human touch we are able to provide? We need the budget passed, and we need to include strong, accountable investment in home care. But even this proposal, as important as it is, must be just the beginning. Pennsylvania needs to take bold, long-term action to fix this broken system. We need to ensure all home care workers earn a living wage of at least $20 an hour and have access to meaningful health care and benefits. We need an enhanced reimbursement rate that rewards high-role home care agencies and providers who invest in their workforce, those who provide training, fair pay, and stable jobs. Public dollars should lift up quality care, jobs, and nonprofit providers, not subsidize companies that cut corners, steal wages, or exploit their workers. States like New York and Texas have already implemented enhanced rates to reward high-quality employers. Pennsylvania should do the same. It's time for our policies to reflect what we all know in our hearts, that caregiving is an essential work, and caregivers deserve to be treated as essential workers. Home care is life-saving work. It keeps people out of institutions, out of hospitals, in their homes. Where they belong, it gives them independence, dignity, and hope. And for workers like me, it gives us purpose. But without investment, the system will collapse. And when it does, the cost will be measured in human lives. We are the people who make independent life possible for Pennsylvania's most vulnerable. We deserve the stability, respect, and fair pay. And the people we care for deserve nothing less than a system that values their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Tony?
Good morning now.
Good morning.
Thank you, Senators, for being here with us in Philadelphia. My name is Guy Anthony Brooks. It's spelled GUYANTHONY BROOKS. I live in an accessible, affordable home integrated in the community in West Philadelphia, but not born and raised. 15 years ago, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident that transitioned me into an institution. Whilst I was in the institution, I needed services and I needed information on how to get myself out and live in the community, because I was an able-bodied person who had a profession, who had a company opening on himself, and the accident just changed everything in a second. Like we said, we did not know when we would need this help, but definitely we'll be needing some help. So in the institution, I met the consumer who was in the institution, mentioned to me about independent living in the community, and I was involved. I got informed about Liberty Resources, which is one of the largest independent living centers in Philadelphia County, which helps the surrounding counties, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and I believe Philadelphia County itself. And as we said, we are growing as we are aging in place. My disability is not going to be any better than it was 15 years ago. I am aging, I am going to be needing services. I had a personal care attendant who was helping me in home, but she had to leave the job because the pay wasn't what she felt it was that would help her. So I had to depend on my family, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, to help me in that stage of looking for care attendants to help me in my home. And as we have mentioned already, healthcare is an issue which we need to deal with in this nation as a whole, not just in Pennsylvania. We know we have other issues, but at least Pennsylvania should start something, create where it would go on to inform the other states, like the folks from the board who said that we only know about the statistics from Pennsylvania, but our surrounding cities and states, we can connect with them. Home care services means freedom, dignity, and independence for not just me, but us who are engaged in activities in and with the community, like working and being independent to go anywhere. Home care services helps me in my home with my life. It is part of our freedom, part of our liberty, part of our access to do what we need to get done. Governor Shapiro and legislators, it is time to do what is. Pass the home care legislation with fair wages for all home care workers so people like us have access to in-home care we need. Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and again, thank you for joining us. I'll open it to questions from my colleagues for the panel. Senator.
Thank you, Senator Miller. Thank you, everyone. I would appreciate if all you could contribute to this line of questioning so we can get a full spectrum or perspective. For Matt, how does SEIU Healthcare as an organized labor union impact the outcomes for our seniors and people with disabilities who are receiving care at home? And is the standard of care generally better or worse when a direct care worker is a member of a union?
Well, we believe so, yes. And I think our union in particular impacts the healthcare system in many ways, and we'll stay focused on this hearing on home care because I think that is where we've been working now for a couple of decades to try to advance what I said earlier is the model of care that we think is the absolute best policy, which is the participant-directed model, which takes wherever the state sets the rate and gets that rate 100% to the consumer, who then can decide, set the wage for the worker who's taking care of them. Other ways in which so that's been a policy initiative and certainly an organizing drive of ours for over a decade for sure. And we've seen some progress. Home care workers have built a training and education fund so that folks can get basic training to be able to do the work in people's homes. We've also, I think, worked really hard as a union to fight for the funds to be able to lift the wages for this workforce. And we've continued to hit real resistance. And I would say both from folks in the legislature, and also I think from industry leaders oftentimes who don't want to partner around transparency. And we just think that it is so critical that folks in Pennsylvania have self-determination, both the workforce and consumers, and we believe that workers coming together can create that self-determination, working alongside consumers to lobby for and also to organize and demand the kind of resources that we need to be able to do this work. And I just would point again to the example in Washington State, where literally they were in the same place 20 years ago that we are right now today in Pennsylvania, and change is absolutely possible if we can create the demand from the ground up, and also, I think, push electeds to invest in a way in which really lifts up human dignity all across our Commonwealth. So I would say those couple of things. I'm probably missing others, but we'll see what other people have today.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
For Monica, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's not easy. How does being a union member affect your work?
Being a union member, it makes the job a little bit easier. Without the union, you are overworked, taken advantage of, and you lack a voice. And so with unionship, you actually have members and partners, can I say, who will fight along with you for unjust treatment, fair and equality in the workplace. So it makes the job a whole lot easier when you don't have to fight so many different situations in the workplace. You actually have representation that helped you along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for my friend Tony, not to put Matt on the spot, but would you agree with Matt? And do you think the quality of support you receive is affected by union membership?
You got it.
Definitely, it is affected successfully, and it creates more of a bond between your personal care attendant and you who needs the services. As we know, it's not everybody's disability which is the same, but we are all disabled in a kind way. We need a basis of empathy where we can build and create that bond of understanding that when you come to me to work with me, it is not that you're in a rush. We have this amount of time to do as much as I need in the time you give me, even though I need more time with you to help me with basic little things, not just in home, but out in the community. I live alone, so that personal care attendant is like my other sister, my other brother, who I can call on when I need help.
Well, I guess without that personal attendant, you really are a prisoner in your home because you have no independence whatsoever.
Just one other piece to this question. So the other challenge I would just say for home care workers, in particular the participant-directed model, is they've been written out of the rules. So basic labor rules do not apply to them. So participant-directed workers do not have collective bargaining in the traditional sense that you would think of as maybe a nursing home worker or a hospital worker. They literally, our home care union is a voluntary organization in which workers come together, pool their resources to try to make the changes that people need. And so I just think it's and it's not by accident. This is a workforce that's predominantly women. This is predominantly people of color, and like they have just been written out of the basic labor rules in this country. And so that's another really important piece that our members are working on, is like coming together to be able to effectuate change both in their industry, but also even just getting the basic right to be able to have collective bargaining, which is something we've not been able to achieve in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Matt, for all you do, and thank you for the union, because I know we wouldn't even be where we are today. And we've known each other a long time, showing my age here, a long time, but you're always there fighting for your members, tooth and nail. So whatever you can get, you get. So thank you for what you do.
Do one more thing.
Yes, I just wanted to add a comment to that. As we know and we see the profession is not called a profession. It is called a job. where we need to change it from that being called a job to be a profession where they are recognized as a workforce, because we are aging in place. Every day somebody's aging, and we don't want to be transitioned into an institution where I lived and I was ignored throughout the whole day. Our call buttons are there, they hardly work, or nobody will come around. But when you have your own personal care attendant with you for the time of duration, from probably the time you open your eyes to probably the time you fall asleep, you know that, yes, there's somebody there who I can call on no matter the time. And it's not taking it as a job where, oh, I'm off work right now, so I cannot help you. We need to understand that level of understanding between a personal care attendant and a consumer.
Yeah. Thank you very much. For additional questions, Senator Kim, followed by Senator Zaval.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. This one is for Mr. Yarnell. You said the average wage is $13.50 an hour. That's what, $28,080? $28,000 a year. What was Elon Musk's pay package? What was that?
I think we're on track for him to be the world's first trillionaire, I believe. So yeah, it's
Very interesting.
yeah.
Very interesting. And then you gave Washington State as an example. Was that a divided state, do you know, when it was passed 20 years ago, or is it?
That I don't know that exactly, but I think it's been, you know, a democratically led state, so the politics are a bit different. But even with that being said, like the massive amount of organizing it took to be able to go from where the state was 20 years ago to where they are today, really spoke to being able for workers to achieve collective bargaining rights, and then be able to, you know, actually drive a model of care that is taking 100% of the, you know, really finite state resources and making sure it's getting to consumers that can then be directed directly to the workforce. So I think it's the politics are a little different, and I think even 20 years ago, I can get back to you on that with the exact, you know, what the legislature
The
looked like at the
dynamics were
time.
back then. So you frequent the Capitol with you and your team in the Government Relations Department. What is the pushback of people who don't agree with you? What are their reasons?
I think this state, well, right now, so the participant-directed workforce, there were about 21,000 caregivers in it. When the state moved to managed care, we have seen that decline pretty rapidly, and some of that is service coordination and communication. But that's also, I think it's either 4 or 5 of the top, the leading home care agencies in the Commonwealth are private equity backed or owned. And so there's been real opposition, you know, for as long as we've been in this space to try to prevent the participant-directed model from expanding. And, you know, we believe that has a lot to do with, you know, profit motivations, you know, of entities that are, you know, largely led by or owned by private equity. You know, and we actually think it's a mistake. I mean, I just think there's plenty of space here. And as I referenced, Rep. Benham and Ortite's bill is actually calling for everyone to get an increase to figure out how do we lift rates, but also with that are strings and accountability to make sure that if money goes in the system, we know where it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Yarnell said about the shrinking workforce. So Ms. McDuffie, is this job for anyone? Could anyone do this job?
Absolutely not. This job is not for anyone. It's not for the weak. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of love, and care. We do have many who don't fit the bill, but there's a whole lot of us that dedicate their daily day to take care of others. I wake up and I can't wait to get to work to help some of the people that I care for, because they are wonderful people. But there's a lot, it takes a lot to do that every day. So it's not for anyone.
I know that. I've spoken with the direct care workers, and they just have a special heart. They have a special mindset, And it kills me to think that they're going to Sheetz and Jersey Mike's to make an extra dollar. We're wasting precious people to make sandwiches versus helping somebody get out of bed and give them dignity and extend their lives. So it's so painful to see that, and you should be getting paid what you're worth. And then, Mr. Brooks, if your care worker doesn't show up, is sick, can't get there, what happens to you?
First of all, like we said, we needed to be a professional funded job position where we have somebody else who can help, who is at least right around the corner from you, not less than 10 minutes away from whoever it is, or somebody on call who can be called and ask, do you have the time to run in because this person is running late or cannot make it because they have family issues also. And usually when it gets to that point, I am stuck. I do not know what to do unless somebody's able to help me. And if there's no one to help me, I am either in my bed throughout the whole day. And I have experienced that in an institution. I don't want to be experiencing it almost every other day of being out of an institution for more than 15 years. I have to call and say, is there anybody available to help? And because of the disparity of wages, it is tended to let people think that I'd rather work in a restaurant, clean plates, I'd rather go to a supermarket where I would stand for hours just dialing in, or be a warehouse worker than even thinking that one day I'll be in a position where I need help. And where would I get it from if it's not there? Who can I depend on if you do not have a family member or if you do not have any family at all? So that is where the direct care worker comes into play, where at least I have that person, that call away where I can depend on someone to help me. Even though it is not 24-hour, but some people need more than a 24-hour help.
I think that there are two types of people in life, people who want to help and people who need help. And today you are helping us to understand what somebody goes through. And you're a wonderful voice. You have a strong story. So thank you for being here. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank you,
add
Senator.
on to this question? I am in a position right now where I am faced with leaving the field. I am a nursing student, but I love what I do. I would like to stay in home care, but it does not pay enough. I have children, I have bills, and so I have to make a hard decision, and that's to do what I love or follow the money. And it's a shame that that's what it's coming down to. If you look at it, we are all kind of in the same field. Nurses take care of people. Home care workers take care of people. We change rooms. We clean patients. And so, though this is what I love to do, I'm being forced out because of the pay. And that means that there's going to be more of our clients without care. And I'm not the first, and I won't be the last.
Thank you. Senator Saval for additional questions.
Thank you so much, Chair Miller. Thank you all for your testimony. It's been extraordinary, frankly. I just will note, Tony, it's amazing to hear you speak about this. We have you have been such an important advocate on transit, on affordable housing, and obviously for home care workers as well. And so just appreciate you being here. And Monica, I just want to note, I appreciate that what came through in your testimony is obviously the professional acumen that you bring to the work, but also that it comes out of personal and direct experiences of care and care among family members that are close to you and how much they depend as well on caregivers. I had a question regarding, I believe, forgive me, is it your father who had a caregiver but had a lapse in hours? What leads to that lapse in hours?
The coverage from the insurance companies, the funding, you have to jump through hoops just to get the little bit of hours that you get. And they kind of cheat people out of care just to save a buck. And so with that, he does not have coverage for certain parts of the day. He has bone marrow cancer. That means that he can barely get around some days, and trying to take care of himself during those hours that there's no one there, he is hurting himself. And it's actually costing more, because that means that he has a hospital stay. And so there needs to be more leniency when it comes to the coverage and the level of care that each individual is in need of. Because when they fall short, these people are actually losing their lives, or they're being hurt in those hours that they're not covered.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I appreciate that. President Yarnell, you've sort of alluded to this, or you've explained it in various ways, but the decline in the utilization of the participant-directed model. You mentioned the move to managed care and also private equity behind some of the associations. What do you think is sort of decisive, or the sort of biggest explanatory factor? And then Washington State, you said, has 75% of the workforce in participant-directed care. Are they facing similar pressures from private equity or changes, or is that actually, are they able to kind of resist that?
For Washington State, I think they've been able to really resist it because the majority of the workforce is organized, and they've set up a process in which, these are good careers and people are choosing to do this work and stay in it. So I think that's a bit of a shift there. I think the move to managed care was complicated. There was the kind of go live period, and then just to Monica's point and your other question, we faced very significant service reduction in hours from all, really from 2 of the 3 MCOs, but all 3 are really sort of reducing care hours since we've been through the go live period. So that is just a challenge in itself, to make sure that through service coordination, people are getting, the hours they actually need of care, per day. So that's just an issue we've been working on, I think, for quite some time. And then I think there's also just some ways in which the agency space is being able to sort of pre-auth people and get people's services turned on faster. And we've been working, participant-directed home care workers have been, really working hard with Dr. Arkush to try to, make sure that the participant-directed side of care is able to speed up and being able to get people's services turned on. It's pretty lengthy on the front end when you're trying to get your services to when you first apply for them and then can hire your caregiver. So that there are barriers there that we could certainly follow up coming out of the hearing with you on some of the barriers that we've been working on and advocating for change in the space, particularly in participant direction. It's also, I would say, why the $21 million investment from the governor, in participant direction is so important, because if you invest in the participant-directed space, you can absolutely lift wages, at a really a significant pace. Obviously, the consumer gets to set the wage, but if the state, invests the money and lifts the wage, ceilings, that allows consumers to then pass that money directly through to their caregivers. So, it's part of why, we think that it's so important to invest here and lift wages, because there's not the, we can't, because we don't really know what's happening in the private space. space, you don't have 30 or 30+% overhead because there's not an agency. It's literally a direct relationship between the consumer and their participant.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Street has joined us. Any additional questions, Senator Street?
One, just want to thank you all for coming out, and two, when we were moving to a managed care model for home care, I had a number of concerns that I voiced in hearings at that time. One of the things that sort of strikes me as unfortunately being consistent with the concerns I had at that time was, Monica, Ms. McDuffie, yours concerns about cheating people out of the coverage they need for portions of the day, and that ultimately it would result in a terrible environment for workers because people aren't getting there. Workers want to provide the care and they develop relationships with the patients. Two, that patients' quality of care would drop, and ultimately the irony is it would cost the government more money because, like you said, people would end up in hospital stays, and so they have a lower quality of life at a higher cost. Can you elaborate a little bit on how they cheat people out of coverage? I chair the Banking and Insurance Committee, and like I said, this was I had from the very beginning, before we even started this process, concerns about that. But your sort of explaining a little bit how you think they go about cheating people would be helpful to us in sort of stopping them.
They're painting the picture as if the medical conditions and their needs are not as urgent, which means that when the doctors are told of medical needs, assessing medical needs, a lot of the times they are not truthful and forthcoming with the exact disabilities in full. I've watched them lie. I've watched them cheat and blatantly just disregard the concerns of family members. They disregard the concerns of the patient. If they're saying that their leg hurts and they can't get around, the doctor is telling them to go to physical therapy, you'll be okay. And in that meantime, that they're underestimating the real effects of this person's disability, these people are left to fend for themselves, which means that they're hurting themselves because a doctor they have painted the picture that it's not that bad. And this is where the issue comes in.
Yeah, so I just want to say this, that you sort of alluded to another issue, which is we know that people of color and some even poor white folks are not believed or not heard when they talk about their concerns about their health. And in this case, it's more pernicious because we know it's not heard even when there is no financial incentive for them to not be heard. But in this case, there is now a financial incentive to not hear people. And when you couple an implicit bias with a financial incentive to lean into that bias, I can see clearly how we get where you are. So I just think that we have to look at how we should not have implicit bias aligned with financial incentive in that way. And for folks, I've been using big words. Basically, folks already don't want to believe poor people and black and brown folks. And now they make money off of not believing us. At least they think they do because it ends up costing more down the line. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So thank you for sharing. I know we're short on time, but this is really important that we get this on the record.
It's not just poor people. Middle-class people get the least. You work all your life. You save up, you buy a house, you live the American dream. They completely ostracize the middle class. You have to be either physically poor or absolutely rich to get certain services. My dad is COPD. He's hooked to an oxygen tank. He can't get a person out one day a week unless he either pays out of pocket or he gets no service at all. And this is somebody who did everything he was supposed to do his entire life.
Yeah.
It's not just a poor thing.
So
It's just a structured thing of this is the bulk of America. They're going to cost us the most. So what are you going to give it to them or them? It's just a lot of people just not getting the services.
So I'm going to clarify myself, because most folk are poor, they just don't know it. No, I'm not trying to be funny. No, I'm just saying most of the people that live where I live say that they're middle class. They're not. Most of America is poor right now. Now, look, and we can call them middle class if it makes people feel better, but the reality is the structural inequalities we have today means that most of America is poor, and most of the people that walk around here calling themselves middle class are poor, and that's why the system is working against them in the way that it is. We have, but I agree with you. When I say it, I'm not talking about people who don't have jobs. I'm talking about people who go to work every day. No, I'm just saying, but I'm talking, but he went to work. I'm saying people who are, a lot of the working people in this country who go to work every day, do the best they can when they have a medical emergency are going to need these services because the cost of healthcare is such that they can't otherwise get it. And ultimately they're mistreated. But I agree with you. It's it's not just a small fringe portion of a population. So if I made it sound that way, I'm glad you spoke up, because it's not. It's the bulk of America.
Thank you, Senator Street. Go ahead.
We are in a system that is systematically broken, period. For people who need to take and have the care that they need to have in their homes. Monica just stated, this young lady here else just stated it. We have seniors that live in their homes all their lives and don't sometimes get the care that they are necessarily needed to have for one reason or another. It does have a lot to do about class, so to speak, and it don't even really care what color you are. We have a system that's so broken that they'll rather take and give money to the rich and keep us continually to be down. Us as black and brown brothers and sisters, Latinos, and anyone else that is not of the white descent. Now, don't get me wrong, because we have some that are underneath of us and are behind us and are willing to fight for us, but it is a systematic system that keeps us black and brown brothers and sisters down on a constant basis. Anytime they tell you you made $5 more, you can't get help in your home because of it.
Tony, did you have some additional? Yes, and then we're going to, yep.
What you were saying, so I'd like to speak about that. What they do is that when a person's in a hospital, say for instance, my parent is in a hospital, the doctor will give a certain assessment. It says the patient needs this, and this. The state will turn around and say, okay, well, the consumer may have started off with maybe 30 hours. Then what the state does, they'll come in now, they'll say, we know that they need the care. We see what the doctors say. We see the care, and the state will drop their hours down. So it leaves a lot of people in this predicament and other people predicament without the proper care because the insurance in the state wants to cut down on the payment, which puts everybody in jeopardy. What I tell people all the time, each and every one of us is young and vibrant, indeed, but we all want to need a level of care one day. If it's not us, it's your family member, it's your loved ones. So we have to keep in mind that we're all one day will be in the same predicament and we're going to need someone to love us. Some people don't have children. Some people don't have people in their family to help them and love them. So it's important that people like us, as myself, as a caregiver, is appreciated and valued as a person and not looked down upon. Not say, okay, well, you're no one. We don't deserve insurance. I'm sorry to be lengthy. But also, if you, what the state requires, if you make a certain amount of money, okay, you're no longer entitled to free health care for you or your children. Yes. So if you get a check, let's say maybe $1,000, out of that $1,000, you have to take $300 to $400 to $500 to $600 just to get insurance to cover your family and your children. So now your pay is being dropped down. The rate of the rent, the rate of everything in the economy, that's excessive. We can't afford it. So what happens? We're on the street, and then people look and say, well, why should we give you? Because we are people too. We are taking care of your loved ones. We are taking care of people and neighbors that you love because we want them to survive. This, like he said, he was in a nursing home. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. God sent him someone to say, hey, you can go home and live. You know, if you do the research, I don't have the numbers, but most people die when they go into these facilities. For neglection, for not being taken properly, and their voice is not being heard. Us as caregivers, we have no voice.
Thank you very much. Tony, you want to wrap us up here?
Yes. As we are all speaking about this, I have seen it through the medical model view and the social model view. Like I lived in an institution, I found out that it is 5 times more to take care of somebody in an institution than taking care of the person in an accessible, affordable home in the community with their personal care attendant coming to take care of them no matter what hours. Just give it up 24 hours a day. You can care for this person. And I live on it. I use it. If it wasn't for this social model which we need, which is home and community-based services, where we have a one-on-one, instead of being in an institution where the personal care attendant needs to take care of multiple people in a regulated hour of probably 8 hours a day. But that means I'm not going to get 8 hours a day. I'm just going to get probably 30 minutes or even less than that, because they have to rush to take care of the others. In the community, I'm happy, free, liberated. I don't need to sign myself in and out. I have the freedom to just click a button and I roll through a door, an accessible door. I don't need a doctor to categorize me as, yeah, you're a person with a disability and this is all you need. Come on, I am growing. I have an example, my durable medical equipment, which I use monthly. I was given a regulated number. Every time I speak to my doctor to require more, it is coming back that from the MCOs and from here, you cannot get that. I said, for what reason? Probably it's a communication issue, because I've been on that MCO with that insurance for the longest of me living out here in the community. And like we said, the hours which have been provided has been the same for the past years. I need more hours. They'll say, you do not need it because you are. Don't categorize me. I'm a person. Nothing about us without us. I am an activist with ADAPT, ADAPT. It's the grassroots organization which was created back in the 70s in Denver. And as you can see on my hoodie I am wearing, I have end the institutional bias, affordable, accessible housing, community first choice option, Disability Integration Act. These are things which we have come state level to the nation to speak to them about accessibility. But like we said, let's start in our own state first. Let them see the progress we are having in our own state before even a different state starts it. We have the solutions. We have the ability. I know it is left and right, back and forth, but come to a common sense, a common agreement that we all in the future would be needing these services. Definitely might be, one day I'll be needing somebody different to help me because they cannot help me no more because they are aging out.
Yeah. So I want to, again, thank you for the meaningful testimony. This dialogue is very helpful for us. I do want to say that we have champions of you workers in this field up here on this panel. We share your frustration with the lack of movement. We run into challenges with the majority caucus in the Senate that we continue to push back and against every day. I want to thank our leader, Casa, for joining us today. You talked about the budget impasse, and the House has continued to pass reasonable, common sense budgets. The Senate Democratic caucus has continued to supported similar budgets like that are reasonable investments that invest in people in Pennsylvania. So we hold policy hearings like this to highlight and to have these dialogues. But then we'll continue to push on the majority caucus in the Senate. So again, thank you for your testimony. Is very meaningful. With that, that concludes our second panel. We're going to move right into our third panel. and the impacts within the industry. We have 2 representatives from PHA, Pennsylvania Home Care Association, the Senior Director of Government Affairs and Senior Director for Regulatory Affairs and Program Development, and lastly, the CEO of Liberty Resources, Thomas Early. Thomas, if you want to kick us off. Yes. Okay. All right. We'll keep rolling. Thank you. All right. Gentlemen, good morning. I think it's still morning. Good morning. Cody, you want to kick us off?
Good morning, everybody. Chair Miller, Senators Kim, Tartaglione, Saval, Street, Leader Costa, if you're still on the phone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today on behalf of the Pennsylvania Home Care Association and our more than 700 member agencies providing home health, home care, hospice, and hospice services to over 400,000 Pennsylvanians. Cody Jones, I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs. With me is Matt Barbie, our Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs and Program Development. He also worked for many years on the provider side, so he can probably be especially helpful with this conversation. Direct care workers are the backbone of home-based care in this Commonwealth. They help older adults out of bed, support people with disabilities, and care for medically fragile children so they can live safely within the dignity of their home. Our mission is simple but vital: to ensure Pennsylvanians can receive high-quality, person-centered care in the setting they prefer, their home. Pennsylvania's home and community-based care system is under serious strain. The LBFC's workforce study and the Department of Human Services Mercer rate and wage study both confirm what our members live every day. Reimbursement has not kept pace with costs or market conditions. The average statewide rate for personal assistance services is $20.63 an hour, the lowest among all neighboring states, trailing by as much as 76%. Since 2013, inflation has risen 41%, but rates only 12%. Turnover is roughly 80% each year because caregivers can often earn more in retail or warehouses than providing hands-on care. That leads to more than 112,000 missed shifts every month, with about 10% of all authorized hours going unstaffed. This is not an administrative issue, it is a structural funding issue. Both state commission studies concluded that a 23% increase to roughly $25.38 an hour is the minimum investment needed to stabilize the system and protect access for more than 150,000 residents. Failing to act now won't save money. It will simply move costs into hospitals and nursing facilities where care is twice as expensive. PHA and our partners recently submitted a program revision request calling for a 13% rate increase next year, with a goal of reaching that 23% benchmark soon after. That investment would strengthen wages for 200,000 direct care workers and protect access for 155,000 Medicaid recipients and stabilize a network already stretched thin. Even at that rate, Pennsylvania would still lag behind every bordering state, even with 23%. We're not asking for excess, we're asking for fairness and the ability to compete for the workforce that holds this system together. As we look at possible solutions, we also need to learn from past efforts. House Bill 2372, introduced in 2023, was well-intentioned in its goal of raising wages, but it would have required building a brand new oversight system that redirected dollars away from care. The Mercer study shows that agencies already pass through about 85% of reimbursement to wages and benefits. The challenge isn't distribution, it's adequacy. And that's why we see real value in the kind of conversations happening right now in the Senate. Senator Saval's bill that would create a direct care worker wage board is a good example of the shared thinking that's emerging. It reflects the same underlying belief that drives our members, that wages must be grounded in data, reviewed regularly, and tied to the actual cost of providing care. We may come at it from different angles, but I think it's clear everyone in this room is driving in the same direction. We all want caregivers to be paid what they deserve. We all want these programs to last. And we all want Pennsylvanians to have reliable access to care at home. True progress depends on 3 commitments. Recognize home care as essential infrastructure. Investing here prevents costly or institutional care and keeps Pennsylvanians where they want to be, at home. Establish regular data-driven rate reviews so reimbursement keeps pace with inflation and workforce realities. And create what we're calling a home care council, very similar to your proposal, Saval, that brings together providers, managed care organizations, and state partners to improve efficiency and guide investment. When rates are fair and predictable, agencies can raise wages, reduce turnover, and maintain continuity of care. When they stagnate, access collapses, and the state pays more elsewhere. This isn't about numbers, it's about dignity. The dignity of a grandmother who wants to remain in her home, the dignity of a caregiver who deserves a living wage, and the dignity of a Commonwealth that values both. We urge the General Assembly to make fiscal year 26-27 the year Pennsylvania reinvests in home care through fair reimbursement, regular rate reviews, and true partnership with the people and programs that sustain care across the Commonwealth. Thank you for your time and your continued commitment to those who care for Pennsylvanians in their homes every day. And I also want to say thank you to Monica and Tony for sharing their story. I know this isn't an easy thing to do all the time, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Cody. Matt?
Oh, no testimony from me.
No
just
additional
from,
testimony. Okay,
yeah.
all right. So we'll open it to any questions from my colleagues. Thank you. Senator Saval.
Thank you, Cody and Matt. Thank you for the testimony and for being here today. So I wanted to, we obviously heard from caregivers and the union workforce prior to to Section 3 here, and so we agree that recruitment and retention are essential. And quality wages and stable work environments are critical. And generally, union workers report higher satisfaction in those areas than their non-union counterparts. And so I'm just wondering if you can talk about in what ways you've worked with union and non-union partners to support workforce standards across the industry.
Well, I can say that in my year on the job, we have reached out to SEIU. We've had several meetings. We've kept an open dialogue. I think that we've got slightly different perspectives on what the quickest way is to a solution sometimes, but that does not mean the conversations stop. And that an open dialogue is probably the biggest key that we can utilize to try to unlock a path forward. We are open to conversations, unionized, non-unionized, agency participant directed. I don't think cutting us into sections or small groups is going to be super helpful in trying to reach a solution to this, and that we need to create broad coalitions, and that's what we're trying to do. And I'm sure Matt would agree that that's the best solution to the problem.
On specifically one recommendation that came out of the LBFC report, and I'll just read the recommendation. I was just curious of your thought about it. The General Assembly should consider requiring annual inflation adjustments to home and community-based services, state-directed rates, including a required amount that must go directly to direct care workers. And I'm just wondering if you would support that recommendation to sustain workforce compensation.
So one quick thing on the cost of inflation and all of that is I just want to be super careful how we go about that, because we have a ton of ground to make up. 23% to get us to just under the next lowest state in the Commonwealth. So we've got a significant amount of investment we have to make before we can start talking about keeping it at a solid level. As far as a COLA increase would go in year after year, we first have to make a significant investment to get us up to a place where we can maintain a steady state as it relates to inflation. As far as a pass-through to the direct care workers, I think that would be a conversation where we would need to see some concrete language in place to figure out what that looks like. What we don't want to do, what I do not think would be incredibly helpful, would be investing in when we are already passing through 85% of the reimbursement rate that we're getting from the Commonwealth, and then creating a bureaucracy to ensure that we're passing through 80%. My fear would be that we'd be creating a new oversight body that does not currently exist, that would take money out of the system to monitor the system and ensure that we're already doing the stuff that we are doing on our own and are going to have to do courtesy of the federal government oversights in their 80/20 regulations that CMS has.
Just on the compensation, are we, since it seems to be clear that we're not actually, the tracking is not as solid as we don't track the number of professionals, and often we don't, from previous comments, we don't seem to, we're sort of not fully clear on compensation and where it goes. Is that, I mean, is that number, how sure are we of the accuracy of that number? I mean,
Of which number of the,
of how much compensation goes to direct care workers?
I mean, it's an exact science at the current moment, but we've done internal polling. We've got the Mercer rate and wage study that the DHS put forth, the administration sponsored. I trust the numbers coming out of that because I trust most of our providers. That being said, it is a mildly inexact science, so I can understand that. But I have confidence in those numbers going forward. Just also keep in mind, the biggest threat to any of our providers, to the system as a whole, is ensuring we have enough caregivers to provide the care we need. It is not in anybody's best interest to underpay a direct care worker to try to take advantage of them, because this is a marketplace. So if a direct care worker feels like they're not getting a good deal at one of their agencies that they're working for, they can go to another agency. And so there's this market effect that that has a lot of impacts here.
Yeah, I think, and of course, I mean, I think the line of questioning is to get to that wage rate, at least in particular. I mean, I think, you know, it seems like the way that we lag behind neighboring states and the like is on a number of different levels, but I mean, the wage rate is pretty stark, you know, in that sense, which is why I specifically highlighted that one recommendation from the LBFC report. But you know, I hope that we'll continue. I'll cede my time to my colleagues, but I hope we'll continue to find ways to make sure that compensation goes directly to the workers and we're able to raise rates.
And we are open to every one of those conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tartaglione.
Just one question. Where did the 85% an hour reimbursement rate get given to the direct care workers?
That was from the Mercer rate and wage study that the Office of Long-Term Living commissioned through Mercer that they just released. Well, I say just released it, that they released in February.
What's Mercer?
Mercer is the company that the administration contracted with to conduct the survey. It was conducted over the course of 2024.
No, what does that business do?
Primarily, they do studies like this, among other things.
I'm just going, in 2022, I worked with two agencies. I worked with one that gave that reimbursement rate that we got, and the second acted as if they didn't know what the hell I was talking about, excuse my language. And not all home care workers, when that incentive was given out to the state, not all of us got that reimbursement rate back into our pockets. They took it themselves and acted as if they didn't know what we were talking about. I took several times, sent several emails and informed them that I was with an agency that was under a union. And they still did not know what I was talking about. They still wanted to act like, oh, we have to take it to a higher level of what you're saying to us, because once again, technically I could have told them what they got from the state, but they still wanted to be dumbfounded. And even though there have been several companies that actually have taken and turned over from one management to another, not all agencies got that reimbursement rate like they were supposed to. It did not go to the workers. It went to the companies.
Aren't
I believe where she wants to really explain it is that not all agencies follow the policies and regulations which are given out. We have these agencies where they put up billboards saying, come into my company, you will get this incentive.
That's right.
It will continue rolling over. But that just covers like maybe the first 90 days you're with them. Then after that,
that's it.
So now with me having that personal care attendant helping me,
I'll be good for probably the first 90 days. Then all of a sudden, oh, I cannot come and work this much for you no more because my time has been reduced because the wages have been regulated to this hourly wage. So it could mean that, yeah, I could have probably 40 hours a week, but I have to cut it out where each day is less than what I was really needed. And the agency might help fight with me to get that done. Turnover would be okay, but when this other agency comes in and starts giving them this incentives, telling them all this, then 90 days later, they lose. Yeah, they cannot provide that personal care attendant cannot be with that agency no more because they don't have.
Our next panel is going to talk about wage theft. So,
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Senator Kim for additional questions.
Thank you for being here. You could have said no, but I think it's important to hear the feedback from some of the folks behind you. What is the average turnover rate for your association or your home care?
It's industry-wide, it's 79%
79%?
annually.
Annually. And then you said that it's incumbent upon them to keep their workers, but if they don't want to be there, they can go somewhere else. Do you have
Yeah.
was that accurate? I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, I probably misspoke, or overspoke on that, but yes, I mean, I was trying to illustrate the fact that it is a marketplace. It is in a provider's best interest to take care of their employees to the best they can because they want to keep those
Right.
employees.
Do you have an example? I know you don't own a home healthcare, but do you have an example of one of the organizations doing something different to keep their direct care workers?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that.
Thank you.
We see a lot of members within the Pennsylvania Home Care Association investing in different types of benefits. So as you guys know, in Philadelphia and Allegheny County, you're required to offer sick time. Many companies are extending that across the Commonwealth and even going above and beyond the requirement of 40 hours in those areas. In addition, short-term disability, long-term disability, some of our members are offering 401k and retirement options. So there's a whole wealth of different areas they're investing in. One other area that I would say is notable is a lot of companies are going above and beyond sort of the state requirements or contractual requirements. And what that looks like is investing in nurses within the office so that if a caregiver or a participant has an issue, there's a nurse on staff to answer those questions, provide education, things of that nature.
Thank you, Mr. Barbie. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Senator Street.
Sure. Look, thank you all for being here. Sort of picking up on the line of questions that my colleague, Senator Saval, was asking. I just want to clarify a couple things. It is true that you all support increases to home care wages. You think that they're just too low.
Yes, and that's participant-directed and agency model.
Got it. All right, thanks. Given that, is it also true that both in an ideal world, that it would be better if wages and reimbursement rates kept pace with inflation?
Yes, I do not think we'd be in the position we are today if that had been the case all along.
Yeah, because when in sort of in the exchange with Senator Saval, it seemed to be a little unclear when he was sort of getting to that point, but I just want to make that clear. And then I guess my final I think the larger issue that he raises and the part that I have a little concern with is you're right that home care industry home care workers are the backbone of the industry, and without it, they can't function. But you raised the issue of the marketplace. Well, the issue is that having a stable workforce for the marketplace in the aggregate, given the prior two statements, is part of the issue. And I think that was what the prior panel was alluding to. And so it's not simply that workers can leave to go to another agency. It's that they can leave being home care workers completely to go to other industries. And so the escalation and so while it may be in the interest of home care agencies to keep their workers as sort of, and they may be able to, in a competitive way, keep them from jumping from one agency to another. If we continue to underfund the market for home care workers, and we, the Commonwealth, are complicit in that, then those workers will just leave to do other things. And so they won't leave one agent, Mr. Barbie's agency, to go to another agency. They will just leave it to go, work at an auto garage or work at retail or do something else, because the wage scale isn't where it needs to be. And the problem with that is, one, the quality of care in the aggregate that patients receive drops. And the expertise that those folks have developed has left the industry completely. And so the quality of care that people are receiving for the money being paid, whatever that money is drops. And ultimately people's health drops. So I would just suggest that my colleague Senator Saval's point about making sure that we not only stabilize what we're paying people so they can stay, but then make sure that we don't see ourselves in this position again, is probably in the best interest of your industry as it is the individual workers.
And I completely agree with you. The only point I was trying to make was that if we, hypothetically, let's say we could wave a magic wand and establish a cost of inflation tied rate right now, we are so far behind that keeping things steady state from here going forward with a COLA increase, even if it was every year, wouldn't be enough to get us to the place that we need to get to, because we're 23% behind right now. So then we'd be just codifying being 23% all the time. We need a massive investment right now to get us up to a place where we need to be. That's all I was trying to say.
Agreed, and I think Senator Saval, and I certainly won't speak for him, but I think on this case I can. He was agreeing with we should have the massive investment, but then wanted to make sure that as we made continual investments, that money reached the workers. And I'm glad that you agree. Thank you. I yield.
All right, thank you very much. This concludes our third panel. Appreciate your time here. For our fourth and final panel, our workers' advocacy, we have a representative, an employment unit attorney from the Community Legal Services of Philadelphia. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Rhiannon DiClementi. I'm an attorney at Community Legal Services of Philadelphia. I want to thank Senator Miller and the committee for inviting me here today, for SEIU for hosting this important panel, and especially to my fellow panelists and all of the workers in the room today. I think, it's one thing to read data in a report or a study. It's another thing to hear from directly impacted folks about the lived experience. Each year, CLS represents over 2,000 low-income workers in Philadelphia, including many home care and domestic workers. In addition, our Health and Independence Unit provides legal advice and representation in public benefit matters, including access to publicly funded long-term services and supports for older adults and folks with disabilities. Today, I would like to share some stories from my work representing home health aides and to advocate for better wages, working conditions, and protections for this essential workforce, whose legal rights to even minimum wage and overtime pay are currently under attack at the federal level. As we've heard, home care workers do difficult work, it is intimate work, it is emotional labor, and as we have heard, it's necessary work. Pennsylvania's elder population ranks 5th in the country, and our state also has the 5th highest level of people with disabilities. Surveys of care recipients and their families, and as we've heard today, confirm that these populations prefer to remain in their homes for as long as possible. Going forward, it's undeniable that even more home care workers are needed to fill this growing demand for in-home care. We will not be able to address this growing demand without addressing the low wages and lack of benefits currently available to home care workers, which, as the study shows, are the primary contributors to high rates of turnover and labor shortages in the industry. At CLS, we regularly receive requests for legal assistance from home care workers in the greater Philadelphia area. Most of the home care workers that come to our office are employed at will by private agencies to provide in-home services to elderly individuals. These workers are almost always women, and they're disproportionately women of color and immigrant women. They work long hours, assisting their clients with activities of daily living, like bathing, dressing, cooking, medical care, transportation, and more. They offer their clients consistency and stability in their daily routines. Despite the important services that these home care workers provide, almost half of all direct care workers earn less than a living wage, and 12.6% live in poverty. According to the LBFC study, the average hourly wage for home health and personal care aides in Philadelphia in 2023 was just $14.51. This is hardly sufficient to raise a family, and many home care workers struggle to pay their bills, and they often rely on other public benefits, which we know are now also at risk. In contrast, according to the MIT's Living Wage Calculator, the living wage for a single adult in Philadelphia is $23.26. For a single mother with one child, the living wage is $43.77. These prevailing low wages are not competitive with other industries, which draw from the same pool of job candidates, like retail or food service. These jobs are often less stressful and physically demanding than home care work. Home health aides must be paid more, not only to address a growing shortage of labor in this industry, but also to ensure a living wage for these essential workers. Raising wages, which can be supported by higher Medicaid reimbursements from the state, could help decrease turnover, attract more caregivers to the industry, and improve the economic security of these workers and their families. While it's not the only source, Medicaid is a significant payer of home care agencies, and it funds participant-directed care services in Philadelphia. Currently, the Medicaid reimbursement rate paid to an agency for an hour of home care in southeastern PA is $21.52 per hour. Notably, as we've heard, many of our neighboring states have higher reimbursement rates. What I want to point out is that agencies do not get reimbursed at a higher rate when their employees work overtime, which in many cases is impossible to avoid due to labor shortages and demand for services. So for example, if an agency pays an aide $15 per hour, the worker's overtime rate would be $22.50, which is higher than the current reimbursement rate. Unfortunately, what we at CLS often see in our work is bad actor employers seeking to increase their profit at the expense of their workforce. In addition to low wages, wage theft is a very prevalent problem in the home healthcare industry. Yeah. I'd be curious, if folks want to raise their hand if they've ever not been paid on time, not been paid what they're owed, not been paid overtime. Yeah. In 2021, the U.S. Department of Labor launched a nationwide initiative focusing on home health agencies to enforce our wage and hour laws. The DOL completed 1,600 investigations in the first year of this initiative and recovered $28.6 million in back wages for nearly 25,000 workers. A really striking statistic to me is that violations were discovered in 80% of the investigations that the DOL conducted into the home health and nursing care sectors. At CLS, like I said, we regularly work with home health aides who have experienced wage theft. And the most common violations that we see are failure to pay overtime. For example, in a case called Harling versus Silverheart, CLS represented approximately 200 home health workers, and we were able to recover over $500,000 in unpaid overtime wages for these workers. In this case, the agency only paid the regular rate for all hours worked. Some workers in this case worked up to 100 hours a week. In another case, Pearson versus New Day Home Care, Our office represented approximately 150 home health workers. In this case, the employer had their workers sign multiple offer letters with varying rates of pay, which decreased as the scheduled hours increased. For example, the worker got $13 per hour if she worked 40 hours a week. But if she worked 50 hours, her rate would decrease to $12.20. If she worked 70 hours, her rate would decrease to $11.50. The employer manipulated the rate based on the total hours worked, so that whether she worked 10 hours a week or whether she worked 100 hours a week, her average rate for all hours worked would equal $13, which was her regular rate of pay. Essentially, the agency was paying straight time for all of the hours worked, although it looked on paper like they were paying overtime. In this case, we were able to recover $585,000 for 150 workers. Just recently, our office was contacted by a home health worker who has worked 112 hours a week for the last 3 years. Although she works 72 hours of overtime per week, the employer would split her weekly pay into 2 paychecks, 56 hours on each paycheck. That way, they would pay her 80 hours at her regular rate and only 32 hours of overtime per week. We estimate that she is owed about $260 per week for 3 years, which is the statute of limitations on a wage and hour claim. Another way agencies avoid their overtime obligations is by misclassifying their employees as independent contractors. This also allows employers to avoid paying other benefits to workers, like workers' compensation and unemployment insurance, as well as payroll taxes. In another case our office handled, the agency misclassified a home health aide as an independent contractor. He worked full-time for this agency for over 4 years, and he regularly worked overtime. However, because the employer treated him as an independent contractor, they never paid him any overtime. We estimated that he was owed over $18,000 in unpaid overtime wages. I could go on with many other examples. We've seen cases where agencies fail to combine hours between multiple clients for overtime calculation purposes, or fail to pay home health aides for time spent traveling between clients' homes in the same workday. I'd also like to note that we've seen an increase in non-compete agreements for home health workers. Non-compete agreements limit a worker's ability to work for a competitor for a period of time following the end of their employment. So if a home health worker were to voluntarily leave an agency, perhaps because they wanted to go to an agency that paid a higher rate, they would be precluded from doing so for a period of time. Unfortunately, because of the disconnected nature of this industry, it's difficult for workers to discuss pay issues with their coworkers. Most of these agencies don't have HR departments, and home health workers often do not realize their rights are being violated until well after the fact, sometimes even beyond the legal statute of limitations to even bring a wage claim. In one last example, CLS was contacted by a home health worker who recently started with a new agency. She went in person to the agency's office to complete her onboarding paperwork. But after her first 2 weeks of work, her paycheck did not come through. When she contacted the agency, they told her it must be an issue with her bank, but assured her that they would wire the information, her paycheck, to the bank. The money never came through. She continued to work, but when her next check also didn't arrive, she went in person only to find that the office was gone. After she contacted CLS, we discovered that a class action lawsuit had already been filed against this agency alleging similar claims. But the case was withdrawn because the plaintiff was unable to serve the business owner, who had closed shop and moved out of the state. These workers never got paid. These wage violations do not simply represent technical infractions. They amount to the theft of time and hard-earned income from countless workers who depend on fair pay to support themselves and their families. As the home health workforce grows, this industry could provide economic security and mobility, or it could trap these workers in low-wage jobs that have little room for growth. State policymakers have the opportunity and the responsibility to improve outcomes for home care workers and the families they serve by not only ensuring that this workforce is supported by sustainable wages, but also ensuring strong oversight of publicly funded private actors to ensure compliance with our workplace laws. Thank you.
going to start us off with just a question on in certain coverage areas. So do you cover outside of Philadelphia, or are there other entities that do cover other parts of the state?
So at Community Legal Services, we just represent residents of Philadelphia. There are other legal aid law firms outside of Philadelphia, like Legal Aid of Southeast PA, Justice at Work, that provide representation to workers outside of the county.
Thank you for what you do protecting our workers. Appreciate it. Yeah. Any questions from my colleagues, Senator?
Just one. Has any of your wage theft cases involved individuals who were represented by a union?
No.
Thank you.
There you go.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Any closing remarks from my colleagues?
Look, just want to thank you for the work that you do. And, you know, it sounds like the combination of underfunding reimbursement rates to begin with, coupled with the fact that there is the law that has no mechanism for increased payment if overtime is needed, creates this sort of perverse incentive to steal wages. And I think one solution might be, I just want to ask if you think it makes sense, is if you could show if an agency showed a demonstrated need for overtime, that it could then, get more money to pay it. At least it would remove some of the fiscal incentive, because if they didn't show that they were paying overtime, then they wouldn't receive that extra money.
Yeah, I think that could be an idea to address the problem.
Senator Sewell.
Thank you for your testimony and your work. Specifically on misclassification, this might be a hard question to answer, but do you have a sense of how pervasive misclassification is in the industry?
I don't have data on that. I would also be interested in that. We do see misclassification in many industries, but I would say, in my experience, it does seem prevalent in the home health industry as well.
And what specifically is the recourse with regards to, and I guess what specifically is the recourse within Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's hard for workers who are misclassified to address it directly with their employer. There isn't a standalone kind of legal challenge to misclassification, so you could bring a wage claim and then argue that you've been misclassified. You can challenge a misclassification with the IRS. I believe the Department of Labor and Industry will investigate employers who have misclassified workers. A lot of times that's kind of looking into unemployment insurance benefits that the employer should have paid but never did. But I will say it's very hard for a worker on their own to go to their employer and say, I think I've been misclassified. Could you treat me as an employee? We don't really see that happen.
Is there, certain other states have updated their kind of definitions of employees. California has obviously gone through some struggles around that, but Massachusetts, others, would that aid your work in terms of supporting workers who've been misclassified? Because we have a misclassification act, largely covers the construction industry, but yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Other states have been passed what's known as the ABC test. It's a much more straightforward, easy way for someone to assess whether an individual should be treated as an employee versus an independent contractor. Right now, there's varying kind of multi-factor tests to make this kind of determination tax law or wage and hour law, but I think an ABC test would make it much easier and much more straightforward.
Good, thank you.
Any other additional questions or closing remarks?
I just want to add something, and we need to figure out how to track this, because those of us home care workers that go to work each and every day, we also have some workers out here that actually have consumers that even clock them in and have never went to their homes. And that is an issue with a lot of us who work each and every day, go to work like we're supposed to, and then you've got some consumers trying to break down checks. So when we talk about theft of services, we need to add that in and figure out how to also stop that from happening. Because at the end of the day, if you have hours, you should be utilizing your hours the proper way and letting your attendant come in to do the work that they're supposed to do. So we need to look at that too.
Also, I want to, it's also a system thing. It's almost like merge all of this, together, for the benefit of people. Like she said, some people don't get paid. I had a thing where it was an error in the system. I didn't get paid for 2 weeks. I got a mortgage to pay. I got car notes to pay. And guess what it was? Oh, we're sorry, it was an error. Oh, we're sorry, it was duplicate. Oh, there's no one to stand up if you don't have a union behind you. And that's where a lot of people get just like she says, people don't want to hear. We go to the employer, it's hard to defend yourself when you have no backup to do it. So I think that it's important that we try to make it clear for everyone. You understand? Like the young man, I don't remember his name right there. Him. Yes, him. He said, go to another agency. Why? Because some agencies pay the correct rate that they may get, and some don't. Some keep it for themselves. They say, hey, we're not going to pay the employee. I'm going to go to Brazil for 2 months. And it's unfair for us because we're not in Brazil with them.
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
think that we come together as
Yeah.
people and try to bridge the gap of people getting paid fair, the system working correctly.
Yeah.
Because I can say, like he said, they sent out money to people and say, hey, he's the person that writes the check and says, hey, AV company, this is for your employee. And AV company says to him, okay, thank you. And the employees never get it. Like she said, some of us get it because they're the good companies that give it out and other companies don't. So then it kind of falls bad on the system and us as well. So I just appreciate everybody here trying to rectify because we have all been a victim all of a system that's overloaded and not being communicated correctly.
yeah. Yeah, and thank you. We really do appreciate the dialogue. It is very meaningful, and would encourage my colleagues that the walk a day, something that I got to do a couple months ago, is really meaningful. This dialogue's important, but going into someone's home and seeing the work that's done by the home care workers is very important. I do want to zoom out just for a second. We see those challenges of affordability across the board, whether it's housing, energy, or healthcare. Our caucus is prioritizing addressing those affordability challenges. We see that private equity impact in whether it's energy or whether it's in home affordability, buying houses for cash where people want to need a place to live. It's something that we're prioritizing as a caucus, and our leaders are fighting for in this as part of this budget conversation and moving forward. I want to thank our host, SEIU, for hosting us today. Very important conversation. I want to acknowledge, as part of that zoom out, the minimum wage as a whole should have been addressed a long time ago. We've got two champions up here in Senator Kim and Senator Tartaglione. I want to acknowledge you for your efforts in that fight. Again, we're going to continue to fight for that in the Senate and push our majority caucus to actually get something done there because it's long overdue. With that, the testimony, we'll take it back to Harrisburg and continue the conversations and push to get the budget done as soon as possible. And Senator, any other final thoughts? Anything else? Okay,
Thank you.
of course. Yep, happy to be here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.